I awaken to the power of the Mandala, a sacred circle of light and energy, a pathway to my centre and to the universal all, a channel for healing body, mind and spirit.
The battle for your reality begins on the field of digital interaction, where the world itself opens to you just as you dream it up. Welcome to Infinite Imaginarium, Mandala Meditation, with our special guest, Adam Millward. Hey, what's up, Adam? How's it going?
It's going great. How about you?
Going really good, and I'm glad we get to talk to each other. I've been seeing your art for a while on mine, and I love all the stuff that you post in the Infinite Imaginarium group. It's really cool.
I'm excited to get to know you a little bit too, and to share what my art's all about.
And we also have Nikki. Nikki, are you there?
I am.
Cool. So let's dive into it because Adam has really cool mandala art, and I guess can you introduce yourself and a little bit about your work and what you do for everybody that kind of maybe doesn't know you?
Yeah, sure. My name's Adam Millward. I'm a Canadian artist. I was born in 1980, so I'm 36 years old. I developed my style of mandala artwork while I worked in call centers. I used to doodle on little post-it notes, and a friend of mine suggested I try painting them on canvas. At the time, I wasn't really into that. I didn't think of them as art, but many years later, I decided to give it a go. And after I did my first one, the feeling that I felt was just incredible inside. I was like, wow, this is so much fun. This is something new, something cool. And I went all in on it. And a few years after I started painting, art became my full-time career. And throughout the way, I think by sharing my art and my message, I've been able to reach a lot of people and share some inspiration that way. So, that's basically what it's about for me, is pursuing my own passion. And by doing so, I hope the results that come out of that inspire other people to go after their passions, because life is short and, you don't want to end up regretting your life. You want to end up looking back and saying, yeah, I gave it all I had. And that's what my art's about.
Totally. I totally get that too from your art. And another interesting thing I find about your art, you do it totally 100% hands-free, right?
Well, not hands-free, but free hands.
I mean, free hands. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. But you don't use geometric patterns, like stencils or whatever, but you...
Yeah, I do it all hand-free, for free. I do it all free. I don't use any geometry tools. I don't use a ruler. I don't use a grid or anything like that, mainly because of the way that I develop my style on Post-it notes. I kind of use the corners and angles and the edges of the canvas to keep things lined up and symmetrical. So yeah, that's how I make them happen.
Yeah, and now you're getting them pretty big now. I saw that email of your new one. How big is it?
It's 4 by 4 feet. That's the third painting I've done that size. The other two were a lot more detailed and they took a lot longer. But with this new one, I wanted to explore what it would be like to do a big painting with a big, thick brush, so it would make the pattern a little less intricate and a little more bold. So that's what I wanted to do with that recent one that you just got in your email.
It's really cool. I just recently signed up for your thing, and you want to say what your website is and how they can get in contact with your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is www.nexus, that's Nexus, visions, visions.com. And once you're on there, there's a little pop-up that'll come up, or a little form at the bottom of each page where you can sign up for my email list, and that's the best way to follow my new art, with social media algorithms, or if you're not logged in all the time, you can have them waiting for you in your email, and you can open them at your convenience and check out what's new and what's going on and what I'm working on.
And actually, I'm glad you shared this one blog that you did, and it was about, can art heal yourself, and you shared a little personal story about yourself. And what the Tibetans use, and even a lot of different cultures use mandalas as this prayer, but also to heal themselves, their inner world, and to help reflect the outer world. So I find this whole thing kind of fascinating. If you kind of want to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I worked in call centers, I was in sales, and in that atmosphere, there tends to be a lot of drug and alcohol use going on. People going out and having a few beers at lunch, and maybe a few more in the afternoon at break, and so on and so forth. And I got caught up in all that. Eventually, I started using hard drugs like cocaine. That was pretty much my life for about 10 years. Was working in call centers, going out to drink and party as much as I could. And then when I started to paint these mandalas, the feeling that I got when I completed one was just was magical. I mean, honestly, I don't even know how to explain it. It's very spiritual. It's deep. It's a feeling that I can't even give a name to. It was just so powerful that I decided that I wanted to pursue this feeling as much as I could. And I found that the only way I'd be able to do that was to cut the partying and the drugs and the alcohol out of my life, because I couldn't paint when I was intoxicated, and I didn't want to paint or do anything else when I was hungover. So I changed my life around completely, and I stopped drinking alcohol. And it's been 5.5 years now that I haven't had a drink of alcohol. I stopped using hard drugs and cleaned up my whole life. And by doing that, I was able to really give it my 100%. The way I thought about it was, well, if I was able to spend X amount of hours every week in a bar drinking and partying, I should be able to spend that same amount of hours painting if it's really my passion. I took all that time that I used to spend partying and turned it into something positive, and that's where everything really grew from, was that desire to experience that feeling I got when I finished a painting, and to share that with other people. Other people might get that feeling from nailing a trick on a skateboard, or from getting a perfect shot in the movie that they're directing, or from, figuring out some complicated programming that they've been trying to do for their new app that they're designing. But that's what I'm trying to do with my art, is tell people, go after that feeling. Whatever gives you that feeling, go get it, because life is short, and we're not meant to spend 40 hours a week sitting at a job we don't like. We're meant as humans to go after that feeling, and that's what propels humanity forward, is people seeking that feeling, or innovating and nailing something new and sharing it with the rest of the world.
And there's this great quote by Alex Gray, is that I think that's why the artists make art. It's difficult to put into words unless you are a poet. Taking is being open to the flow of the universal creativity. And the Zen artists know this. And this is kind of like, it comes in different forms of whatever your expression is. But it's this kind of like deja vu kind of feeling. And I express it as that I'm just a pen, because I like to do poetry and stuff. So I feel myself, viewing my own self like in third person. And it just coming out of me is like I'm like receiving it from something. And it just flows, and everything kind of like falls into its place. And then you're just like, whoa, like that's that like magic that happens in flow of art. And I think too, what's so healing about this is because I think what you're talking about, because I used to work in the kitchen a lot, and the same kind of thing is like after work you're really tired and you go and get some drinks, and then it kind of like then you wake up and you're hungover, and like to get over that, like you either take energy drinks, and then like it's this whole kind of like cycle of that. It's because we have like this ease with what we're doing, not doing what we're meant to do, because like we have these like different thoughts, like, oh, that's something else, like what you were saying, like, oh, I'm just doodling, this is something I just do for fun, this is not like, I'm not an artist. I used to have this impression too that like poets and artists are something other, they're like these other people that do that, but it's really, they're just human beings too, and it's just a matter of like connecting to yourself, but also to the world at large. And it's amazing, as the more you do that, the more that you attract of this, the more things you look up to, the more people you meet. And this is why I like these talks, because everybody expresses it differently, but everybody is like in that same flow. Actually, we have Missy here.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Sorry I was a little bit late. I love hearing about this story. I'm really inspired by stuff like that. I'm all about art therapy, so I'm like, yeah.
And what I was thinking about earlier, when I was doing some research, is they have this trend of these coloring books, and like people color, and then it's supposed to be like help them meditate and stuff. I used to work at a school too, and I used to get these coloring books of Mexican folk art, and have all these different patterns. And I used to sit there and like color. And it was funny because at first people were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I don't know." Like I just got like really like in depth into it on my focus. I just kept on doing it. But it's weird how doing something like simple like that, especially I think it's a matter of your focus. Like it draws everybody in. Soon I had all the kids like looking at what I was doing, and then they asked if they could do it, and I gave it to them. And like we would have times where the after school care would be crazy, like kids running around like crying and not wanting to do homework, and like people picking on each other. But like after a while, like I had like a good majority of the kids like coloring these like crazy pictures, and like everybody was just sitting there like quiet, just focusing in on coloring.
I mean, we're all kids at heart. That's why I'm such a fan of art therapy in general. I mean, my parents were artists, and sitting there watching them paint or draw, even if I wasn't doing it, just watching them do it, starting at a canvas of nothing, watching that first kind of like dot hit the blank canvas, and then from there just go into like some other world.
And going back to Adam, there's this deep history of mandalas. They're as old as humanity have been doing these mandalas. And even if you ask like the Zen Buddhists about their mandalas, they said that they're just reflecting the sacred geometry that's in nature and in life and the divine form of everything. I think it's really interesting that when I was reading on your website, you were talking about this moment where you had this reflection and how you saw that like all sorts of different people, how like the people that made the paint, the people that made the container for the paint, the art store, the canvas, and all this. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I can go into that. That was an amazing moment. I remember it very clearly. I was actually on my way to work in the morning when that happened. I had spent the day before like painting for like 14 hours or something like that. And it was just really intense. Like I kind of went into a trance almost, and I just like saw the spider web of connections of all the people that were involved in creating one of my paint or anything for that matter, you know. But in this case, it was just specifically thinking about my painting. Like, you know, there's like you said, the company that makes the paint, and then all the people that work there, and then there's the company that makes the bottles that the paint goes in, and then there's the company that ships the paint, and the truck or plane that the paint gets shipped in, and then there's the store, you know, I walk into to buy the paint, and somebody had to stock those shelves, and then there's the company that builds the shelves, and like, you know, between all the people that are involved in all those companies and all the different parts of the truck or the plane, or, you know, all the construction workers that build the buildings that all these companies are housed in. I mean, it's really, that's the connections that are present in all of our lives all the time. And when you stop and think about it, it's pretty miraculous that those different layers of connection, you know, that for me was a really special moment, because it made it, how can I put it? Like, I really felt like I wasn't alone making this art. Like there was this whole team behind me helping me do it.
Like synthesis, or like some sort of like contagious synthesis where it's like your creation, their creation, all the creations.
Yeah, exactly. It was really amazing moment for me.
So it's interesting you say, you know, that you were thinking about all that stuff, because there is this whole thing about connection, and I think one of the key sort of similarities with artists that I find when I speak to other artists is that they tend to have these brains that connect everything up. And in terms of somebody that is quite left-hand brain orientated and thinks in a very linear fashion, that sounds a bit kind of a bit hippie and like, oh yeah, you connect everything up and you don't believe in coincidences and that type of thing. But when you think about the logic of it, so it's kind of like art is all about that, but yeah, the mandala art sort of takes art to a new level, to a whole new level, because a mandala is infinite. What do you feel when you're actually creating the art? Because obviously, I'm guessing you must get an experience just from looking at your own art, if that makes sense. I know that probably sounds a bit mad.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. When I'm actually making it, the best for me is to not think at all. The less I think, the more I create, because like you say, there's infinite possibilities when you're creating a mandala. That's actually, I just want to quickly mention, that's why my logo on my website is Nexus, and then the X is formed by the junction point of the infinity sign that surrounds the whole thing. And that's why I chose that as my logo and my website, Nexus Visions, is because each mandala starts with that nexus point, that dot in the middle. But after that, the possibilities are infinite. You could take one mandala pattern and color it in an infinite number of ways, and then there's also an infinite number of mandala patterns that you can create. But when I'm in the moment creating art, I kind of I get like a gut feeling of what to do next, and I just do it. And for me, that's the best way to create, because if I start saying, oh well, what if I do this or that, or what if I choose this color or that color, then the act of choosing takes up time where I could be doing. And it's the doing that gets art made. So when I just go with my first gut feeling, that's when I find I do my best work.
Being in the Tao and certain this kind of creative wave that comes. Also, too, recently I've been reading this book. It was talking about this moment where he was in Santa Cruz, and he was talking about people in that specific case. He was talking about taking mushrooms. And they're talking about morphic fields and resonance. The simplest way to explain morphogenetic resonance is that there's this cloud of information and habits that is embedded in different acts and in different species and in different spaces. And that we, by doing these acts and things, we get access to that, let's say, a file of information, and this goes throughout history. And one time I was dancing, and I remember having this moment. Full disclosure, I was on mushrooms at the time, but I was downloading this information of my ancestors dancing, in prayer circles, and it was just this whole lineage of people expressing their self or their spirit by dancing. So I was wondering, mandalas are this kind of very sacred and act that humans have done, and I wonder if you have this sense of lineage of all these people that have done this act. And it's this thing that helps us connect to everything. That's a sacred circle, and it's something too. I was talking to our last artist that we had on, Carolina, and she was saying that she started off doing little dots, and these little dots expanded more. And then Carl Jung had the same type of feeling, and it's something that's I think deeply embedded in us, the mandalas.
Well, it's pretty interesting you bring that up, because my mom's hobby is genealogy, and she's traced my family tree back about 400 years or so. And I forget if it's 9, 10, or 11, but one of my great-great-great-great-grandfathers was an artist, and he was a carver. And there's a church near Quebec City that he did a lot of the carving in. He carved the altar, and there's a whole bunch of little wooden squares around top of the church, and they're simple, but they're all mandalas. I found it really cool that you brought that up. That was one of those synchronistic moments that you even brought that.
It's funny because while he said that, I was thinking of Jung's mandalas that Carolina brought up as well. And when I was thinking about it, I know he was doing studies where he found with his mental patients, a lot of them were doing mandalas, and it had a calming effect on them. And he began to do them as well with them, and saw that this was actually working in a grander scale. And it's interesting that he said that right when I thought of it too.
Yeah, I mean it was pretty. Seeing those for the first time was a really cool moment. I should get a picture and put that on my website somewhere. I'll have to ask my mom for that, because she's got all the stuff. I mean, when
you have to get that. You have to get that. That's so cool.
Yeah, when you go back 8 or 10 generations, it's 20 boxes full of information. So I'll have to have her go through it and find the pictures that she took. But because she actually went to visit the church, I haven't gone myself to visit the church. I hope to one day.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing story. I think there's something to this information that we get when we meditate, and I think what's so important about what you were saying about just doing is, I think, something that we all kind of forget. We all have this mental chatter, we're worried about this or that, our job, whatever it is. It could be making tortillas, it could be taking care of somebody, being with your family, being in that moment of just doing and being. And it's funny because once you quiet down that mental chatter, you feel that connection to everything else. You feel, I express it, my term is the songs of eternity, dancing to the heartbeat of the universe. And so it's like this, everybody's just doing, and we're not talking, and we're like anticipating everybody's step, but it's like this dance, and we're all just like dancing around each other, just doing. And like sometimes, like afterwards when we talk, we're like, how did we do that? I don't know. Like, but the minute you talk about it, like the possibilities like kind of like collapse, and then you kind of like stutter, like there's a little glitch in what you're doing. And I wonder, now that you're doing these bigger art pieces, does it get easier as you start doing more and more, and like as you keep on going into like this practice of your art?
I wouldn't think of it in terms as easier or harder. I mean, it's always been fun. I think my technique gets better, and my brush control gets better. They take a lot longer now because I'm able to make them a lot more detailed, and I add all kinds of dots and extra details after. So, they definitely take more time than they used to when I was just starting out. I don't think I find it any easier. I find the feeling I get when I finish one that takes longer is almost better. Like when I do a really detailed one and stand back from it for the first time, there's that special moment, I think, when I've created a new painting and I know I'm the only person on the world that's seen it complete, and that moment between me and my creation, and I definitely experience more of an ecstasy, I guess, is kind of the word I'd want to use, because it's really like just a sense of pride, a sense of amazement, a sense of beauty, a sense of oh man, it's finally done. Like there's like all these sensations and emotions all combined into this one amazing feeling that I get when I finish a painting, and when it's one that I've really invested a lot of time and effort into, then I definitely reap that reward, that feeling more, and I get excited to share it with other people, share the piece of art, and hope that they can maybe feel some of that too when they see it for the first time. Especially, I think when you see a piece of art or hear a piece of music for the first time, or if you're a skateboarder and you nail that trick for the first time you do it is always the best feeling you get. So for me, when I'm creating a new painting, that's what makes me create the next one, because I want that feeling again.
I guess the better word would be that kind of getting more in tune with that intensity of that mode or that vibration. This is really interesting because I know sometimes you do some like commissioning for art.
I do lots of custom art. Custom art's about 50% of my income, really. I'm doing custom art almost all the time. Custom art's really, it really depends on the person who's asking me for it. Some of them have a healing intention. I've done memorial mandalas for people to remember people that passed on. Some people have a really deep story about why they love rivers, and they want a river mandala, and they'll tell me a story about this time they were by a river and saw a bird come down and it was all meaningful. And then other people are like, oh, I just wanted to match this cushion on my couch, and they'll send me a picture of this cushion on their couch and be like, can you make it match that? So I mean, it really depends on the customer who's asking me to make the art as to how deep and emotional and meaningful it becomes. But either way, for me, it's about that sensation of excitement, because if somebody's excited enough to have me create a piece of art for them that they're willing to pay me for it, then I know that kind of karmic feeling, that connection is coming into play, where like
Hey Missy, you had a question, Seven, didn't you? I think
I was gonna say that, as Cartman mentioned before about the mandalas representing wholeness and been referred to by Jung as a form of squaring the circle. Have you heard that term? Which is a very archetypical kind of motif of going within our dreams and fantasies, but kind of bringing them out in a way where it's like in itself, the mandalas, the archetype of wholeness itself, even. So it would make sense that you feel that when you complete them, or when the more detailed you go within them, for example, makes sense, because it's almost so, I was going to say, bringing the geometry out, which I really like, and the neon pop colors are great. And I think it's so interesting to see how far within you see whatever someone can't necessarily see, and then you bring it to life on the canvas for them, bring it out, three-dimensionally, and even more so because they can take you on a third eye ride. There's some people, I heard someone, not to ramble on, but I heard someone recently comment on how could you have a psychedelic trip from looking at a photo? And I thought, well, Jesus, have they never seen sacred geometry in their life? They're talking about psychedelic experiences and DMT and all this stuff. They're missing the natural geometry around us all the time, I feel like. Because I could look at one of your pieces of your mandalas, I could look at a piece of sacred ancient mandala art or a sacred geometry, a church, like you said, an old carving and an architecture, right? And I could have a total third eye ride if you're focused on it enough, I think. I think it's beautiful how detailed the work is, really.
Yeah, that feeling of wholeness, I think is what I'm trying to share here, and I guess probably what we're all trying to share is that feeling comes from when you're in alignment with what your heart and your mind and your soul are all wanting to do. And when you're not in alignment with your heart and soul and your mind and your body, then you miss that feeling of wholeness and connection, and things, you're not happy, or your health isn't great, or you indulge in maybe destructive activities, smoking, or whatever it is. But when you're feeling that flow and that wholeness, then you don't desire to do these negative things, and you don't have these negative patterns that repeat in your life. You have positive patterns that repeat in your life. I think that's one. Mandalas are one way of hopefully, maybe on a quantum subconscious level of expressing that and sharing it with other people. Maybe without even ever them knowing who I am, or just seeing my art. God knows where. I know other people download my pictures sometimes, and who knows how many people have my art on their phones and whatever. But that's cool, because wherever you see a mandala, I think it's maybe subconsciously a message like, hey, remember you're connected, remember your passion, remember your soul.
Yeah, I definitely think too, and I like what you were talking about when you're doing your custom art too, like some people that maybe wanted to do it as a memorial or whatever. I think too, you could capture that energy that you were saying, when people are kind of like having that will or that expression, and then capturing that in that mandala, and then for them, they have that feeling, that emotion within that picture, and they kind of have their focus and get in tune with that. One of my favorite things, going back to this whole thing about can art be healing, I think that the process of art is really healing, and getting in tune to that wholeness of yourself, the inner, but also to the mandala expresses the outer, this whole intricate whole of everything. And for me, because I'm more about writing, and this is kind of how I express myself, and this is saying that I say all the time, but I always like to say it because I like to remind myself and everybody else. But it goes something like this, is that beauty is beauty, that's all there is to it. If you're interested in yourself, then you're stuck with yourself, and you're stuck with your death. But if you get interested in beauty, then you launch onto something mysterious inside your soul that grows and grows like a secret and same thought until you're it. And so that beauty is whatever you express, this thing that we can't put into words, that connects us to the soul dance of eternity. And I think this is what's so beautiful about when I talk to artists like yourself and everybody else, is that I think we're all, whether we realize it or not, trying to figure out what that beauty that we want to latch onto, that makes it more than just us, and that connects to these other people. And you, like you said, I bet the same experience that you had when you were reflecting about all this different thing that goes into your artwork is about how many different people have their artwork that probably have seen your artwork, like maybe they saw it on a Remind or surfing on Google Images, and they're looking at mandalas, and then yours comes up, and for whatever reason they want to like look at it, and they probably don't even know fully why they want that but it has this whole history behind it. It probably even goes way back to your what was it, like your 11th generation ancestor doing these card workings in churches, and like that's something I think it's hard to put into words, but I think that's that feeling, is that we have this dance of this whole sacred unity of everything, and you capture that in your mandalas. And I think we all been like doing that, either mandalas and writing these poems that stay throughout history, whether it's like a movie that like for some reason people just keep on watching, or music. Music is one of the most beautiful things too as well. And it's funny how the sacred geometry in this artwork can also be represented as music. And there was this recent thing that I posted on Infinite Imaginarium where there's this app that is visualizing sound. And I guess he wrote this like this thing where you put in whatever sound it is, and it represented it as a physical like kind of like smoke thing in like this three-dimensional space. So damn, that's pretty interesting. Like of how we're progressing to bring out this inner world and outer world. But I think too, what Missy was saying is kind of important as well, is that we don't lose outside of the magic that is the natural world. And I think the long sacred history that mandalas have been here is this thing to keep us
powerful.
Keep us
Super
grounded
and
connected. I think Joseph Campbell, his phrase was called Axis Mundi, the center of the universe, and like we're all that one dot in the mandala of everything around us, like the whole universe, and it's really interesting. But I kind of want to end my part on that, and I'll let you guys talk, but I have to go, so thanks for coming in. And
thank you, Satori. The mandalas representing almost a completion. Like you're talking about not going out to clubs and wasting, this life energy, creative energy or flow, and putting it into something, just kind of celebrating it and giving that to others is what I'm talking about. Being able to leave that intense focus behind that you put all of that into. And this is where I'm going to go a little bit into another area where I talked to someone recently, just yesterday, about it. These are indeed magic circles. The circle itself that you are starting within, it really makes you go within. And one of my favorite sayings is within when without. And the further you go within, it's more self-reflection. My friend who does these mandalas out of chalk all over San Francisco, who I'd love for you to meet, the whole point is I asked him, are you aware that you're leaving all of these positive vibrations all over San Francisco? And I thanked him because I'm from San Francisco. It needs positive energy, and I left for a reason. My name means woman of magic. So the fact that these are magic circles that people are starting to leave everywhere and be attracted to and don't know why, as Satori is saying, are important. They have power and history and tradition, and the fact that you can tap into that, uphold that, and give that, pass that on, and leave that for people is great. And I asked my friend, are there any combinations of numbers you notice when you're drawing? For example, he uses chalk, right, on the cement. I said, do you notice any weird vibrational things happen? He said, for some reason with 7s and 9s. And he said, I know nothing about sacred geometry. I know nothing about, nothing about that really. But he's amazing at going and doing these mandalas. But you see, they're having an effect on even him while he's doing them. And even he doesn't quite understand it yet. And he's drawn to do this like positive work and pull people into it and leave them all over the city for people. And I thanked him. And I want to thank you. And I thanked Caroline as well, because that completeness and wholeness that you give back is what the world is missing. Now, my actual real name is the acronym being used for America right now to make it great again, which is really funny because that word means sorceress. It means woman of magic. It's funny to me because of the way that it's being used. But if I was doing some sort of sacred geometry shape out of this and throwing it up for everyone to see, it would be a positive slogan of feminine energy that would resonate around, and people would eventually, hopefully, pick up on that vibration. And that's what you guys are doing. You're leaving these vibrations for people to pick up on, which I think there's so much negative energy to combat.
Interesting. If there was some kind of way that we could see what looking at mandalas has on the physical body, the physiological effects that looking at a mandala has on the body, like to the DNA, to the heart rate, everything, to the brain activity. If you're going to look at the brain activity and see what happens. If you were to look at the brain activity when somebody's feeling some kind of an intense emotion, whether it's intense joy or fear, or you see different areas of the brain be lit up in certain.
You mean like
ways.
an MRI while people are drawing and doing these really amazing focus? Yeah.
What would happen with the brain and the physical aspects of the human?
Well, I haven't looked deeply, but according to young studies, and I'm sure people that do them would agree, and I'm sure Adam would agree that they have this calming meditative effect for the people that are doing them reportedly. So, I mean, I'd be interested to see it as well, but I'm sure what we could do is look up the same parts of the brain that are activated when you're in those states, because I feel like the more you go within, it's just like you transmute. It's like an inner form of alchemy, really, which is why it's a form of magic. It doesn't have to be negative, but all magic starts within a circle, according to magicians. So I joked with my friend who did chalk, and I said, "Oh, you're a magician because you start within a circle." And it made him laugh, because he's not at all into, magic, but it's sacred geometry. It's beautiful. And I just think that it's a form of energy that you're channeling. And we can find those areas of the brain probably if we look up that same effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be really interesting if somebody did a real study where they did put somebody in an MRI while they were either A, creating, or B, looking at a mandala. That would be something that would be really, really interesting to see what's going on in the brain, because there's definitely something going on there. And, it would be interesting to see what's similar between, say, 5 different people looking at a mandala, or perhaps looking at different mandalas. I think it would be really especially interesting because the Beckley Foundation recently, in the last year or two, they did their study on what's going on in the brain when you're taking LSD, and they found that, it basically breaks down barriers in the brain, and it allows different parts of the brain that normally don't communicate with each other to communicate with each other, and that's why people can have synesthesia experiences where you'll see sound or hear colors, however way you want to put it, but
no pain for cancer people that are dealing with battling seeing their death and kind of letting go. You're totally right about that.
Yeah, I mean, this Beckley Foundation study was really a simple study just to do an MRI when somebody was on LSD, and that's all they were trying to do. It was basically the first study that was done scientifically with LSD since the 60s, so it was a big step forward in psychedelic research, and through that, they've actually opened the doors to do another study that I recently crowdfunded, where they're also going to be testing microdosing LSD and using LSD in therapy with alcoholics, which for me is of particular interest because the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson, at one point had used LSD a few times, and he thought it was of great value. And then there was other scientists in Canada in the 60s or 70s, I believe. Humphrey Osmond, I think, was his name, running a study where they took pretty much hopeless alcoholics that were not recovering through any other methods of treatment, and they gave them LSD, and apparently 80% of them stayed sober for 6 months after.
That is really interesting. I was going to ask you, I didn't cut you off, but I was going to ask you how you feel about doing the ideas without the psychedelics and seeing if that has similar effects, because I'm curious if people can access, because I'm not against psychedelics. I think they're useful. I would love to look into them for my PTSD, but I'm more curious what Cartman was saying about the effects on the brain and how it acts going into doing the mandalas and whatnot. I wonder if it would have, what studies would show with people that were not on psychedelics, if they could be absorbed into these spaces in their mind. Their third eye, perhaps, is a way to describe it, right? Being pulled into a third eye ride just based on seeing the sacred geometry over and over. But
that's why I'm thinking it would be so interesting, because up until recently, there was no way to compare the two. You know, if you did an MRI scan of a person looking at a mandala, you'd know what happens to that person, but you wouldn't have an MRI scan of a person under the influence of psychedelics to compare it to. Now, with that Beckley Foundation study having been done.
I see. I didn't realize there hadn't been one before. I was under the impression that had been done, that kind of study.
No, I mean, psychedelic research was very strictly controlled.
It was suppressed a lot. I know it was. Yeah, I don't know why I thought for some reason that had been done.
Yeah, I'm pretty much all psychedelic research, which is something I've been interested in a long time, was pretty much banned, and governments and universities and whoever wanted to study a Schedule 1 drug, there had to be all kinds of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it was really hard to procure the drug, and then there's no legal supplier for LSD. So if you want to have LSD for LSD study, you need to go to a chemistry company and get them to make you LSD. But for the chemistry company to do that is illegal. So there are all these levels. Just even getting the substance to perform the studies was apparently the hardest part. Like, I don't know if you've been following, they recently some MDMA study results where they're getting closer to approving MDMA as being medication for PTSD for specifically.
That's what I was excited about, because I as a kid was doing that on my own, but it wasn't studied, controlled, or monitored, and I was very young, and I was also still in trauma basically every day. So the thing that would be interesting to see is if they honored that and really could provide that for people. I would be so interested. I really believe that would help people a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, to me, I find it incredibly interesting to see the advances they're doing in research on these kinds of chemicals, because up until now, there's been no framework around them. And for me, that's what sort of drew me into visionary art and the whole world of mandalas and everything around them was my psychedelic experiences that I had. And when I had them when I was younger, there was no framework built where it was accepted. It was illegal. It had to be kept underground. I didn't want my parents to know. A lot of my friends were like, man, you're taking acid. You're going to die. There was no reliable information about them, but I had these amazing experiences that I wanted to share with people. And I
want to hear about your first acid experience. I'm curious now.
Well, my first
or at least the one that at least brought you to start, maybe doing the artwork would be interesting to know.
I only started painting mandalas when I was 31, so there was a long time between my first acid experience and me actually painting them.
It may have been like a unconscious thing, so there may have been a trigger to you. You may have. It's hard to know, isn't it? That had you not done that was a precursor to you doing the doodle. Do you know what I'm saying? You may not have.
I'm sure it was. When I took LSD for the first time, it changed everything I was interested. It changed the kind of music I listened to. It changed the kind of art that I had hanging on my walls. I was 14 and I had pictures out of Road and Track magazine, Ferraris and Lamborghini Countach hanging on my wall. Then I took LSD and I had fractals and mushroom posters hanging on my wall.
Oh my god, that's like day and night.
Yeah, I was listening to NoFX and Sex Pistols and Green Day and what I call drunk punk, and then
punk rock.
After LSD, I was listening to Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles and Pink Floyd. It totally
more mellow. Yeah,
it totally changed everything
about
me. So I mean, it definitely was part of what led me to where I'm making the art that I am now, because it got me interested in all that kind of thing. And I think that's where I wanted to go with that with what I was talking about, is now with all this research coming out, where there's actual research being done that's not, stories of some guy on the internet that you don't know saying acid helped him with this or that or the other thing. There's actually research being done by scientists properly documenting it with proper sample sizes and blind studies or double-blind studies where people are getting placebos, and that's the way science is done these days. So to have that actual scientific proof about all these anecdotal stories that people have been sharing since the 60s is incredible to me because, I never thought I'd live to see the day where research on these kind of things would be happening and would be happening legally. And even cooler is that the internet, I can crowdfund these studies, which is pretty awesome. If you go to the Beckley Foundation, I know they're still crowdfunding this new study that they want to do on microdosing and how LSD affects alcoholism. So if you want to,
I kind of think that mandalas are like the non-chemical version of LSD anyway. I think there's probably people that will look at a mandala that perhaps aren't consciously that spiritual or have the sort of discussions that we're having now or really think about these things. Yes. And they won't be, they would have never have done LSD or had any of these experiences that we're all discussing. At some point, we're not going to need chemical elements. We're just going to be able to connect with something. It might start with a picture or an experience.
Yeah, actually, a woman yesterday, she was saying this about the pineal and third eye, how you can access it without psychedelics, without imagery, without anything. Some people, it becomes a normal state, which is what I was saying about me with the trauma that because I sustained it so young, I just had a lot of weird visions as a kid and a lot of things. But I think that I, like you, Cartman, I believe that that's the way to go, is letting people tap into it through art therapy. I think the way to go also is really promoting these links that he's talking about and getting this out there to people. Also, what a great thing to be able to crowdfund and kickstart, because that's never been possible up until now. We're talking about that, right? Like, that's a big deal. That's like not been able to be crowdfunded up until now and open. That's great. It can open doors for people like me that had so much. I mean, I was 12 years old when I did acid for the first time. I was alone and I survived, thank God. And thank God it was such a great experience where for me it was liberating for my trauma that I was going through. But it would be great to provide things for people in a safer environment where they have the ability to know what they're dealing with, know where they're getting it from, which is why I stopped. To give you an example of MDMA, where it was really pure. The woman that gave it to me had known the chemist. It was a trusted source. It was a long time ago, and I remember the issue that I had with 2 days later, I was having trouble still focusing my eyes. And I guess that came down to the dosage, because what it is it's not that it wasn't really of a good quality or made by, a trusted source. It wasn't that. It was more like, how do you exactly know how much you're exactly taking unless you are, a chemist or specific about it, right? So at that time, I was not careful, and 2 days later, I remember sitting across the breakfast table and could not focus my eyes, and it just was like, if this could be available in a safer way for people, it would be great, because you see the effects of it are not necessarily negative, and there are breakthroughs you have. One of them that I had, this is really silly, I wrote something down once when I was having a psychedelic experience. I wrote it down, but I wrote down something and I crumpled it up, put it on the top of my dresser, and I didn't think about it. The next day I remembered to look at this crumpled piece of paper, and I realized that John and Paul, came to me and said something, and I wrote it down, but I couldn't remember what it was until I opened the piece of paper and I read it. What's funny is this is really symbolic and real when you think about it, because I opened it up and it said there are 7 levels. Now, if you know anything about music or the number 7 or sacred geometry, that's all true. I don't know anything about music. I definitely didn't at this time when I was very young. All I know is this vision came to me and I wrote down this on a crumpled piece of paper. I read it later and it said there are 7 levels. Later, I'm finding out as I was listening to harmonic resonance and Pythagoras and all this stuff, I'm like, dude, John and Paul totally came to me and told me this as a kid, and I wrote it down. And it's really funny because nobody believes me, but I'm like, that really happened. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting what kind of breakthroughs you can have. I mean, there's been scientists that have, through their sleep or through psychedelics or through altered states, have had encouragement. Even like there's been companies like Google and all these, they'll go on retreats, they'll all take these psychedelics and have these powwows and brainstorms.
As much as we kind of laugh at these that have lately become fashionable, these colouring in books, that different designs, and some are a bit mandala-y, and it would be really good if this could kind of work its way in to the mainstream of education for children and even elderly people, in old people's homes. I think it could be an amazing therapy, because I totally believe that the whole issue of actually, even if it was a mandala that was just already created for them, that they just colour in, that's what I was saying, we laugh about those colouring in books for adults and everything, but
I was dead serious.
We've got to wrap it up actually soon, guys, because we're coming to the end, but I would really, really be up for promoting you, Adam, and your art, and getting you more into the mainstream in that respect. And they have this thing with my daughter's school where they're learning to write their name, and what they do to sort of encourage the children to write their name is they have like a picture that the child likes, so they have some kind of interaction and connection with writing their name, because then they remember it. It's the way the human brain works. So if they had like mandalas or pictures and things like that they could use in schools, that it became like a more commonplace thing, if that's what I'm trying to say. I think it would be amazing. So I really feel that it would be wonderful if we could promote that and get it into
I think basic sacred geometry for kids, there's fun ways that I've found that are really visual to show them, and I think it's really fun too with the sacred geometry in itself. They see in the shapes, they start figuring things out for themselves. I mean, they're like sponges, It is amazing that there aren't more of those types of books for kids at a young age. It's a shame.
That's a really good point that you bring up, and I think that they are coming out and more and more. I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, when you walked into a coloring book aisle, there was no coloring books with mandalas, or maybe one or two, and now you go into any store that sells coloring books and there's 10 or 15 on the rack. So I mean, I think that they are creeping more and more into the mainstream. I notice them in advertising a lot. There's all kinds of commercials I see on TV that have mandalas in the background, or that have little animations going on where the whole scene will turn into a mandala for a second between a shot. And there's all kinds of mandala artists out there sneaking mandalas into mainstream culture. If I'm not mistaken, I think Damien Hirst even made a mandala out of corporate logos with like McDonald's and Esso and Exxon or whatever. Yeah, I mean, there was another artist that I'm friends with that was not impressed with that, and I thought it was an awesome way to turn those corporate logos into something beautiful. She didn't agree with me. She thought it was a horrible abomination of the mandala form to use those.
A kind of mandala exploitation.
I thought it was really cool myself. But,
it's kind of anarchistic and taking back the symbolism, right? Making it more abstract.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, for me, when I see a mandala, it kind of resonates with me. So, you have to look closer to realize that it's made of all those logos. So, whatever, it stopped me in my tracks for a second. It was wow. And
I think a mandala and the kind of genius of it is that the more you look at it and look into it, the more you see. You could look at a mandala one day and then go off 48 hours and come back and look at the same picture and see more in that picture that you didn't see previously. It's kind of an infinite thing that you just kind of look into it and you can keep seeing more and more that you didn't notice before.
And that's another reason that I put my mandalas on things. Like, I don't just make paintings. I have blankets, I have stickers, I have magnets, I have other things with my mandalas on them, because not everybody wants to collect original art. Not everybody has a budget for original art, but I can sneak my mandalas into people's lives that way for things that they can use on a more regular basis. Every time you open your fridge, you see a magnet, or if it's a chilly night, you're sitting there on the couch, you throw your blanket over you and you can cozy up in a mandala. And you may not even think of it on a conscious level, but being exposed to that vibration every day might help people in subconscious ways that can't even really be measured, or they might not even be aware of.
Okay, guys, well, I think we've come to the end. So, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Adam, for coming on the show. And you know, I really feel that you need to be somehow higher up in the realms of the artist world, or you know, propelling this work, this amazing work that you're doing out much further than you already are. But you're doing a grand job, but I feel you need more exposure and more marketing and promotion or whatever, just to get, you know, get those.
It's slow
Maybe
and
you
steady.
should do kids books and stuff. Yeah.
You know, it's
in my mind then, because I was just going to say, I was thinking kids feel as though, you
just
know,
the logistics of putting a coloring book together, since I don't do my designs digitally, is a little bit harder. It's funny you mentioned kids, because there's one of my biggest fans is a 9-year-old. Well, I guess he's 10 now. And this year for his birthday party, he asked his mom to order my prints and stickers to give to all his friends in their little loot bags. So, I mean, you know, it's really awesome. I mean, he's got one of my T-shirts, and then I guess about 3 weeks
That's probably the coolest compliment you could have ever gotten in your life. Like,
kids that really relate to my stuff. A few weeks ago, I was at a little local event here with my vendor table, and a kid who must have been about 10 ran up to my table, and he's got this look on his face, and he's, "I really love your stuff." And I'm like, "Wow." And he's like, "How much are the T-shirts?" And I'm like, "I was charging $15, but so I said 10. And he's like, he looks in his wallet, and he's like, "I don't have $10, but he saw my magnets, and he went over and he's like, "I have $2 though, give me your magnets." And like, just the look on his face and how excited he was to buy my art was just like, that right there is why I do it. That
I kind of see you as well. I don't know, I kind of envisaged you, Adam, in the future you could do kind of workshops or something with children, or not just children, adults, you know, and give them a bit of a beginning, showing them the direction. Because obviously, I'm guessing with mandalas, it's a very personal thing when you create them. There's not like a cut and dry formula to how you create one. You know, your mandalas and your work are an inspiration anyway, whether you were going to do, you know, any kind of teaching direction or not. So it doesn't really make any difference. You're obviously, you know, you're going to inspire people just by people looking upon your art. So I don't think that's really relevant, but I kind of think if there was some way that you could create a workshop, or where people could come and learn how to create them, or some kind of starting it, would you say there is a way of doing that? Or
it's a matter of finding the time. I mean, I have a list, you know, 10 pages of long of things that I want to do with my art career, but it all takes time, it all takes money, and you know, to put a workshop together is definitely on my list of things that I want to do. But sitting down and putting together a workshop takes a few weeks. You know, I got to make up stencils. Anyway, long story short, I definitely hope to do that type of thing one day. It's a slow and steady thing, building up my business, because right now I'm a one-man band. I do everything myself. I have to create the art, I have to talk to clients, I have to pack, ship, I have to deal with my manufacturers, I have to deal with the accounting, I have to deal with blogs and everything like that.
Can I give you one more suggestion to add to your list of awesome ideas?
Absolutely.
Kids love stickers. My dad makes stickers. He used to do a lot of artwork for the Haight-Ashbury, and they were the most popular sale for that reason that you're saying, that sometimes kids will come up and want just to get something. What I was going to recommend was a pack of stickers with a little pack of crayons or markers for them, okay? And they're going to go crazy for them. They're going to go crazy. That's a fun thing to do, because if you're already just making prints of your already existing stuff and you're just giving a new medium for them, then you are pulling them into making the art. Whether, you know, it's not like teaching them necessarily how to do the sacred geometry, but it's kind of like, hey, go ahead and color it in. So
to be honest with you, up till now, I really haven't focused on the kid market so much. I mean, a lot of the people who resonate with my art and what I'm doing are actually people that are had substance.
Good luck at
had substance problem. So that's
really.
Well, that's because that's my story, you know. That's
awesome. Yeah.
I was doing lots of drugs and alcohol, and mandalas are the reason I got sober. So
I love that. I love that. And I think you should, but also don't forget those little kids that are going to come up to your table being attracted. You can't ignore those little kids because you know they're going to be like, I want stickers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do have stickers. I have stickers available on my website. But,
good.
They're not the kind you can color in right now. But that is a cool idea. But I do have vinyl stickers. I have 9 different designs available, I think, right now, and more on the way.
Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap up now. So I just wanted to ask if, in light of our whole discussion, if you had any final thoughts on what we've discussed here. So Adam, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really glad we had this discussion. It's really awesome to find to connect with other people that resonate with what I'm doing and that are into similar type of vibration of trying to make the world a better place. And, instead of focusing on what's wrong with the world, trying to focus on what's right with the world and what we as individuals can do today to share that the world is okay, the world is right, and the world's a cool place to be and a beautiful place, and life is a beautiful experience, and that it was an awesome experience to connect with you guys and help share a little bit with what makes me tick and why I make these mandalas and share them so much.